Hi everyone, I'm Catherine, the artist behind Bigelow Fine Arts. Last week, I began the candles page from World Within Worlds. How did your coloring go? If you are just tuning in, I'll be working on the second building in a set of 3 using the same techniques. The coloring will be slightly different because of where the light source will be coming from, so grab your pencils and follow along with me. I find that I always start with the shadows. It helps me block out where I need to place my darks, and from there I can then place my lightest colors. In this case, I messed up. I wasn't thinking of the candle on the left and began by laying in my shadows on the left side of the columns. I realized about halfway through this section, so if you are following along, any columns on the left have a shadow on the right. In this case, the line art doesn't help with shadow placement since they aren't hashed in on any of the columns. Where the line art does show shadows, I'll go through and build up the shadows with a layer of burnt sienna. This includes all the places where the wax is overhanging. On the right side of the building, I placed a shadow on the left side of the column. On the left side of the building, I placed a shadow on the right side of the column. It is a little confusing, but makes sense when looking at the building and thinking about how the flames from the candles to each side would cast their light. Pretty much, I assumed the center of the building would be a little darker than the sides. Once I realized my mistake with the shadows, I went back in and erased the shadows I had in place and flipped the colors on the column. Since I had already placed several layers, not all the color came off cleanly, but I took off what color I could and went back over everything with the shadows now in the correct place. With my shadows in place, I came in with the chrome yellow for a base layer for everything else, and it will also act as my highlight color. The highlights are going to be on the sides of the buildings facing the flames, plus anything else that might be facing the flames, such as the roof of the little cupola sticking out in the middle of the building. With my dark in place and everything else light, I'm now going to bring them together with my midtones. I'll begin with the orange glaze, adding in a layer to cover the shadow, basically glazing it with the orange and lightly drawing it into the light chrome yellow. The warm gray really helps darken the deepest shadows. I use the terracotta to block in more shadow while still adding in the orange that I want in these buildings. Once I got past the first section, with the next sections of the building, I was able to get my shadows in the right places and progress went faster. I again tried to not color anything I thought might be wax dripping down the side of the building, as I wanted to save the wax for later to ensure I got all the colors the same. Some of the things seen through the columns might actually be wax, so I tried to leave them be once I realized it. I'm going to go through and refine the colors and deepen the shadows. This also adds more layers and covers the paper better. Refining means I go back and darken up the shadows again to help them stand out, blending more into the midtones and using the orange to really get the colors right. I use the warm gray 6 to really deepen up the darkest shadows. I then go over everything with the orange glaze to tint everything orange, including the highlights. Most of the time, I'm using the terracotta to blend the warm gray into the midtone. I really want to make sure everything has an orange cast to it, so I'll be going over much of the building with a light layer of the orange glaze, both the shadows and the highlights. This will bring everything together as well as make sure my highlights aren't too bright. As I move through, I'll really be thinking about where shadows will be cast, since the light for this candle will be coming from both the left and the right. This makes this candle a little trickier, as evidenced by my lack of thought initially. I'm using a light hand with my layers, so I have to go through and add many layers to each area to build up a depth of color. This creates a richness to the color since I'm adding more than one color to each area. When I got to the steps out front of the building, I changed what I did this go-around. The easel moved a little, so bear with me. I eventually fixed it and added more layers so you could see the process. I didn't like the way the steps looked on the first building, when I colored them with alternating colors for steps versus risers. So this time, I colored the steps a uniform color, but I blocked off shadows where the pillars or building would have blocked the candlelight from coming onto the steps. I used the terracotta and the burnt sienna to form the shadows, adding light layers. There is a bit of a harsh shadow line that I'm not sure if I should be making it harsh or fuzzy. I'll leave it for now and make a call at the end. Since the candles are different heights, I didn't try to make the shadows the same. That takes care of the middle building. I hope you were able to follow along or enjoyed watching me color it. Let me know how your coloring is going and if you've been following along. If you have any questions or page requests, please leave them below or on the Patreon post linking this video. I put in a list of chapter breaks in the show notes, as well as a list of equipment I have or will be using. And thank you everyone for coming along and joining in with me on this coloring journey. I appreciate all my subscribers and look forward to more of you joining in and coloring along with me. That will only happen if you like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, happy coloring!